Hey friends, it's Reverend Nhien, founder of Evolving Enneagram. We are in week 29 of a 52-week Sunday talk series based on the book by Oren Sofer, Your Heart Was Made for This. And these next 2 weeks, we're addressing the topic of integrity. That's the theme from the book. And the title of today's talk is actually Questions to Keep You Honest, in alignment, in integrity by Enneagram Type. Now, I want to begin by sharing a few quotes that reflect the way I'm approaching the concept of integrity. I want to begin by one of my favorites by Goethe, who said, "Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least." And so just kind of really taking this week, this time to focus on your values and really thinking about this idea of integrity in terms of how it might reflect, how your life, your being might reflect or not reflect what you truly value. And in particular, today, I was thinking about how I'm prioritizing today, making sure that I'm actually doing this talk in the morning and honestly not spending too much time on it because our family, my extended family through my partner, has recently experienced a loss in the family, and we are going to go over to his aunt's house soon today. And I was just thinking about how in the past I would not, I would prioritize work over that, and how today's schedule is revolving around showing up for the things I say matters to me, right? And I know from the type 3 perspective that the default is to assume, almost like without even thinking, that work has to take priority. That's a default, right? But it doesn't have to be the way I live. The way I live incorporates not just my impulse, but a longer term perspective and a connection to my heart space. So we're talking from an Enneagram perspective of what we might call three-centered integrity, right? Integrity that comes from our wholeness, where our minds and our hearts and our actions align. So that's the perspective from which I invite you to look at, examine your type, and whether you are living in integrity based on these three centers. So I'll share from Sofer's book. He writes, this is super important because I really, in this interspiritual space that is evolving Enneagram, I'm really doing my best to make sure that when I share from my own value system, that it's not about imposing mine onto yours, right? But really about checking in with what your value system is and not imposing a set of like, this is integrity or this is not, from the outside. So he writes, integrity is not about repressing our impulses or following arbitrary rules, nor is it based on guilt or self-loathing. Instead, integrity is a natural expression of our love and a coherent movement toward happiness and collective liberation. Integrity aligns our conduct in the world with our values, firmly committing to refrain from causing harm and generating the strength to swim against the forces of greed, hate, and delusion in our world. Living with integrity engenders trust, offering others the gift of fearlessness. Honesty and integrity are the bedrock of healthy relationships and are foundational tenets for a better society. So if you've been following along, you know that we've been taking this journey where earlier in the year, we focused a lot on our inner worlds more. And this is part 3 of the book, where we're starting to look at how the inner work we're doing is beginning to emerge or express in the outer, right? And it's not like this is linear, right? This is happening all the time from the inner to the outer each day. So it's not like we were more inward earlier in this year, but each day we can think of it as living from the inside out. And also for me, looking at integrity, and again, I use honesty in the title, partly to be honest, because it's cute and catchy, but really I'm speaking of a larger integrity, right? A wholeness. So I want to share that another quote from Sofer. He says, living with integrity uplifts our hearts and brings truth beauty and goodness to our lives. I wanted to add that so that we are, again, not looking at the sense of like, okay, we should have integrity so that we can become better people. But actually, I have a deep belief that integrity brings us happiness and beauty. And I'm reminded of, so I do volunteer work in a couple of prisons, and at Lansing Correctional Facility, I remember this really amazing conversation I had with some of the guys there, where we were talking about how in the past, they realized that just getting what they wanted didn't make them happy. I mean, how profound is that? Like, how many of us really get or know that, like, satisfying the impulse of like grabbing for what they want didn't result in satisfaction, fulfillment, and happiness. And so we explored this topic that seemed to resonate with them. I mean, I broached the topic of integrity and my belief that when we live in integrity, from a whole place, consonant with our own values or in congruence with our values, that's when we really shine and glow with happiness, fulfillment, and true satisfaction. And so it was kind of exciting to see this nuance of recognizing how certain attempts these men made at fulfillment were unskillful attempts, and they were finding another way. And many of them are now engaged in service, in the prison arts ministry, in serving others within the prison community as a means of expressing from their whole selves, and just feeling so much better about themselves. That again, self-indulgence, we know, right, is not the same thing as self-care and self-love. So questions to keep us honest by Enneagram Type. So I wrote this out this weekend for you. And so I invite you, of course, to focus on your type, which can be the harder one, but to listen for around the circle of the Enneagram, right? So for type ones, questions to keep you honest. To ask yourself, why am I really upset about someone else's behavior? Many ones would be like, oh, it's the principle of the thing, and they distance it from themselves. They try to make it objective when it's really subjective. And so why am I really upset about someone else's behavior? You're coming from a more whole perspective in relating to the world when you're able to recognize that you were personally hurt by something, or you were hurt in the past, and that's why you have this principle that you have, right? Because you're like, oh, this kind of thing hurts people, so I'm going to just be domineering and dogmatic about insisting that this never happened, right? When there's something where there's a kind of inhumanity to your approach, when you're not bringing forth your own vulnerability and your feelings, like what's the deeper reason that this is upsetting you, right? Ask yourself that. And that's going to help bring your heart online into wholeness here. So for the twos, what pleasing or giving behavior am I engaged in that is out of alignment with my truth? So recognizing that being out of integrity in order to win over or keep someone else's affection is just a slippery slope of self-abandonment, right? You probably, if you've been on this path, you probably already know that. But this week you can just remind yourself to ask, what pleasing behavior am I engaged in that is out of alignment with my truth? Okay, for threes, the question is what I'm saying or doing right now true for me? And then on top of that, the added question is, what am I masking, right? Or what am I hiding? So these two questions really help me as an Enneagram Type 3 in checking with myself and asking over and over again, remembering that the greatest deception that threes commit is self-deception. So asking that for myself. So double check, are you living in accordance with your personal values or not? Are you just conveniently wanting or liking something or emphasizing it because it's valuable to others or impressive to others? For the fours, are my actions in the world, outer behavior, in alignment with my beliefs, or do they only track my moods or your mood swings, right? So again, you tend to have the false belief that authenticity, or sometimes integrity, means acting in accordance with your feelings, but your feelings are not all of you. right? They're not the truth of you, even though it feels like that sometimes, right? And so recognizing that you have your long-term goals, you have your principles, there's a type 4 move toward the one that is more principled in that way, right? So just checking to see if you're in alignment in that larger sense, right? And that you're taking action, that you're not just reflecting on it. So for fives, how might my beliefs and feelings be impacting my objectivity here? Oh, fives, you take pride in your objectivity. We even touched on that last week. But the truth of it is, as I watch fives talk, it's so obvious from the outside how you're impacted by biases, by feelings, by even your fear of rejection, and you don't see it, right? And so coming from a place of wholeness and integrity, is being more honest about the feelings that are driving what is going on in your relationship, right? Again, fear of rejection is often a huge one that relates to how you show up interpersonally, whether you are being elitist in your belief that your knowledge base is better, right? Being really willing to be open to another political side by considering how your emotions are impacting, whether you're open and truly curious and receptive in a way where you can truly learn and be objective here. Okay, so the six, how might I be exaggerating negative experiences as a way to justify my actions? Again, there is this focus on, it's like, see, that bad thing happened, and so now I have to do this and protect that and guard against that, and they can't be trusted, and we got to watch out, and there is this overemphasis, exaggeration of your negative experiences. So just take a look, maybe you're not doing it, right? There's a reason I'm doing this as a question. Like, I don't want to make an assumption that this is happening for you, but it's important that you ask yourself to check. So sevens, how am I pursuing pleasure or excitement without heartfelt or due consideration? And so we know that impulse is reactive and fast, and sevens are fast, right? So slowing down can put you in touch with your heart, and where you can make more values-based and heartfelt, wholehearted choices that reflect consideration for those you care about, and a more long-term view, like, of your life. Again, all of your values. But when you're just kind of impulsively going towards what feels pleasurable and moving away from pain and not having that longer term view, or even like a heartfelt view. I've noticed also that and sevens can feel bored listening to people. I think we talked about this last week, if because they're not in their hearts, right? So there's something about the being in your heart that's going to actually give you more true satisfaction in life, right? What you're looking for. There's an emptiness in there that starts to fill up when you can drop. So for eights, how does my tendency to see things in black and white as us versus them prevent me from living in alignment with truth and justice, right? Like, you already tend to think you're in the right, and that the rest of the world needs to be changed. And just really taking time to kind of balance that stronghold of a position. And again, like the seven, you are heart repressed. And so kind of dropping into your heart space where you can feel into, not just think about, but feel into others' perspectives. And so living in integrity includes that, and includes that vulnerable heart space of yours. Like the type one, there are a lot of times you can stand up and fight for some principles, and kind of, it's almost like it's out there, and in your tenderness of heart is like way back here, and kept protective. You're not living wholeheartedly in your even your efforts to fight for justice in your life and in the world. So nines, how does my conflict aversion keep me from standing up or going for what I truly believe? And so whether that's taking a certain political stance, or even just going for it in the sense of making a career out of something that you really believe in, that's super important. And it could be that what you're believing in is yourself. Like maybe you're an artist and you've been afraid to kind of step forward. So think about how living in integrity is about not censoring these aspects of yourself. And really, it's almost like there's a cowardice, right, in conflict aversion, where your willingness to bear through that is a willingness to come into a greater wholeness. And again, all of evolving Enneagram, we come from the perspective that your wholeness is your gift to the world, right? So again, I want to invite you to consider these, but what I or anyone else says from the outside is never gospel for what is true for you, but let it be like reflection points, questions that could help you to gain more committed and ongoing self-awareness so that you can catch when you're moving out of alignment with your truth in a way that that robs you of living from a more fulfilled and soulful place. So with that, I'll see you next week. Blessings. Oh, and don't forget to put chats and comments and all that, because again, all summer long, I'm not leading my contemplative Enneagram groups. And so I won't know who's actually listening to these and getting something out of them unless you tell me. All right, talk soon. Bye.